Morning, morning. Afternoon. How are we? I'm good. Some days I think I want to do the one was put to him that together. Midnight reading. Oh. Oh my. That is horrible. That's hard. And actually know what it means, but yeah, that's why we have that's the guy before we don't run. That's what it is. Yeah, you went up with that one. Yeah, but maybe that's yeah, you know, maybe. Oh yeah.
I think they sit these my great top four.
They were fully checked. And it's difficult, even though it's playing around heavily legally and they don't understand.
See, it's the wrong mistake. A long way from it.
Yes, confidence, I would love.
It's just those weird nails that we don't quite follow.
Oh, yeah. Don't want to do that. Next to you, we don't. I don't want to do it either.
That's why
Not just we took a paying shot or such. I said, then in the end, I actually have to say to you, look, we want all. But it's not just the milk, it's what those people see.
Started to work out how wide they are. It's not. It's pure piece of yes.
Sorry, going up. Turning down the background. That's yeah, they said it's quite entertainment that as well. Yeah.
Can we get to the street? So good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public, and welcome to the Licensing and Protection Committee tonight. Sorry, afternoon. In Pathfinder House. Today is Wednesday, 22nd of October. And start with welcoming our new addition to the committee, Claire Tebben, who's on her way to arriving in a few minutes, hopefully. Also want to express my thanks to Councillor Gardner, who has now left this committee, thanking him for his contributions to meetings in the past. Do we have some apologies for absence?
Yes, so we have apologies from Councillors Chris Holland Ferguson and Councillor Tebben has let us know that she will just be a couple of minutes late joining us.
Thank you very much. Just to remind you, what everybody just I'm going to say is this meeting is the start. We're in a room with one microphone in the other room. Please make sure that you amplify your voice as much as you reasonably can. Make sure the microphone picks up what you're saying. Moving on, item 2, members' interest. Do members have any interest to declare this afternoon?
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, and well, the minutes, further to correct the minutes of the meeting of the committee on 5th of June 2025. Are you all happy to please sign?
Yes.
This? Yes. Yeah. Moving on then to item 3, air quality review and assessment, the relocation of the Huntingdon Air Quality Management Area. And have thank you.
Thank you. So let me know if you can't hear me because I'm quite quiet. So just so some of you remember last year we revoked 3 of the air quality management areas in the district, and then the Huntingdon one remained. And this paper is to also revoke that one. Now we've done some further monitoring. So we continually review and assess the air quality within the district, the nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. And this final air quality management area was declared in 2005, primarily due to vehicle emissions. But with improvements with vehicle technology and also the rerouting of the A14 in Huntingdon, we're now in a position where we can propose to revoke this area. Then measurements that we've taken show that air quality standards are well below the national objective levels and have been so for a number of years. And the guidance that's provided to us by DEFRA states that following 3 consecutive years of compliance, we should be revoking the air quality management area. And basically, we're in that position now. They have been supportive when we've given us their annual status reports. DEFRA have written back to us and say, yeah, you should move on with revoking this. That's what we're proposing to do. Should we be in a position where our monitoring shows that thresholds are being met again, we would consider declaring again. But at the moment, there's no concern that this is likely to happen. So what we're asking from the committee today is to authorise me to take the steps to revoke the final air quality management area in the district. Happy to take any questions on it.
Okay, councillors, do you have questions on this agenda item?
I don't.
Councillor Norman, thank you.
I agree with it, and how important this is to residents. As somebody who's obviously represents Brampton, I know that all the road was being done, everything there. Our doctors monitored the air quality to see about increasing asthma and other respiratory things. So what triggers? So my question about it is what triggers it? How do you know to trigger it?
So we're not going to be changing any of our monitoring.
Right.
Our monitoring is going to be ongoing. So we've got a continuous monitoring station here at the house. And we've also got a number of diffusion tubes that are in Huntingdon and across the whole district. And all those will continue. So we will have data, over years. So if there are any changes, we can see quite clearly from that.
Yeah. I mean, that's useful because then I can feed that back to obviously residents, because that's one of the questions I think I get asked by residents.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all on our website. So if residents want to look at it and they've got questions, we can help with that. And if we get concerns raised about, perhaps a development or, a change in road layouts, that's what of course we can say we can add monitoring in. We do every year, we review the locations anyway to say, do we need any additional ones?
Yes, because I think, it's kind of goes together with planning, isn't it, and development and that, where there's bigger sites that come up and everything.
Yeah. So it'll still be within our planning policy, if it's a major application, that then we need to do air quality assessments to ensure there's not any detrimental impact.
Okay, just for that clarification.
That's great.
Yes, it's just an observation. I know when I lived in London, on the Western Avenue, when you go into Shepherd's Bush, which is heavily concentrated in traffic, they found that putting certain bushes, I don't know what the bushes are, and trees, cut down where the schools and where people were dramatically. It was really, really, really good thing to do. So obviously, if we find areas where it's probably, obviously, it's best that we can sort of bring that down with bushes and trees, but I don't know the names of them, so do you know that, or do you find out?
It's like sort of laws that they can use to take.
Yeah, green things, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cadbury.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the information. My question is the recommendation that you are recommending as officers. Is this the best recommendation that is suitable for this plan?
So we're asking you to recommend that we can take steps to revoke the air quality management area. There's not really a middle ground. It's either declared as it is at the moment, which would be under scrutiny from DEFRA about why we still have it. It could be seen as like an overburden on developers, people like that, because there's requirements in our planning policy that link to it. So at the moment, it's kind of got a negative impact on that side of things. So it's kind of either we continue to have it or we don't. There's not another option I can give.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Just a question from me. The paper talks about nitrogen dioxide. It also talks about particulates and about sulfur dioxide. And I assume that we're within criteria for particulates and sulfur dioxide, particularly bearing in mind particulates that are concerned with diesel engine vehicles. Okay. Don't mind.
Yes. Yeah, so the Huntingdon Air Quality Management Area was only declared on nitrogen dioxide. We've always been below objective levels of particulates across the whole district.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions, councillors? Okay. In this case, the recommendation here is that we authorise the Environmental Health Services Manager to take appropriate steps to revoke the Huntingdon AQLA air quality management. There we are. So can I see all those in favour of that recommendation, please? So, unanimous. Councillor Terry, you in favour as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on then to item 4 on the agenda, this is the monitoring report for the delivery of the service plan for food law enforcement and health and safety regulation. And I think this is again one for you. Thanks. Yeah.
So this is our standard report item on food law enforcement and health and safety regulation. And this time the report encompasses quarter 1 and quarter 2 of this year, and that's largely just due to committee's timing. So the service plans were both approved earlier this year in June, and this just gives a little update on where we are with those. So in the first 2 quarters, we carried out 205 and 201 food hygiene inspections, which brings us to 406 for the first half of the year, which is just exceeding the level of activity predicted. This shows that we're on target with our inspection programme, which is really positive for us. As I'm sure a few of you remember, there's been years where we haven't been in that position. We've had 131 new food registrations during quarters 1 and 2. We operate, but that just means for us there's an additional inspection taking place. We're still finding that people are registering a long time before they open, which is quite a lot of officer effort. We keep having to go back, are you trading yet? Are you trading yet? And eventually they are. So we're feeding that back to the Food Standards Agency that are regularly liaison meetings just to see if there's anything they can do to help that process. We did 19 compliance checks in quarters 1 and 2, and these have been when we found the standards aren't quite as they should be. So we're going back to giving the business some advice and support. We're going back to check whether the standards have improved or not. And with the 400 inspections, happens to 19 compliance visits is on target with what we'd expect to be finding. And where businesses aren't getting top rating, we've noticed that they're becoming increasingly quick to request a rescore, and we think that's been driven by the fact that you get Just Eat platforms, Deliveroo, you're getting knocked off them as soon as your rating drops. So we find instances they're not getting the best rating, there's an instant request for a rescore. So we're going out and doing that to try and get them back on there as quickly as we can to support the businesses. So we're fully embedded now with our digital alternative enforcement strategy. So the lowest risk businesses that get the digital questionnaires sent out to them, that's been working really well. And we can see that we're on target for that, which is, I think, is a big improvement on previous years where we've had quite a few that have been exceeding and been read on that area. So we've also noticed with our export certificates, was slightly higher than anticipated on this, which has been good additional income for us. And we've noticed in particular one businesses is doing a lot more exporting than it has done previously. So that's, I think, why there's a few more requests coming in for that. We've also been undertaking our sampling program in the quarter. You probably noticed both of the areas for this are red, and this is largely to the lab being closed for operational reasons, which means we haven't been able to submit samples to them. There's only three labs within the country. The topics that they've been doing in these 2 quarters were ready to eat dried fruit, nuts and seeds, root vegetables, and fresh and frozen raw chicken, which has been quite varied. And obviously what we've been able to do has been quite limited so far, but 2 officers were out sampling today as the lab's back open, so we're continuing with that. And the last sort of work area of note is we did have a food alert for action in June, which is a notification that comes through from the Food Standards Agency telling us that we have to take action on something. This was on Jolly Rancher sweets because the products were unsafe and they didn't meet UK market requirements because of the ingredients in them. So we took some work to contact businesses that might have been selling them, so sort of like the small confectionery shops, newsagents, and to give them advice about stopping sales and what to do with putting up notices to let their customers know about the problem. So moving on to health and safety, the majority of our work was reactive. You can see that the number of service requests received was slightly higher than we anticipated, and I would say that's largely due to the number of licensing consultations we received, which were the majority of the service requests. And again, this is driven by new premises license, street trading licenses, or pavement licenses. And we've also had 35 skin piercing registrations in these 2 quarters, which again is a bit higher than we anticipated. That's due to one large tattoo practice opening, which I think put about 8 applications through, so it was a good number of those. The new legislation around this area is still outstanding. Some of you might have seen in the news in the last few months. There's been a little bit about it, about the sort of aesthetics, cosmetics industry. Then there's going to be a licensing regime for all of these non-surgical procedures and sort of Botox, that sort of thing. But again, we're still waiting for it to happen to know what it's going to mean for us, or whether it's going to be implemented in the sort of health sector. So that's where we are with health and safety. So I have to take any questions.
Okay. Councillor Mitchell on slides.
Thank you for this. I'm always, we do this as a total. We don't actually get to know how many of these came from the villages or how many towns or what those towns were.
In terms of inspections?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in future, we have that breakdown just so we know.
Can do. Yeah, we can break it down into wards.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best.
Wards is good.
Wards is good. That's
Wards is very good.
Like I said, wards is good reporting system because we get all of the premises are linked to wards.
I just think it would help me personally to better understand, what we're doing in the area.
Yeah, I can do a breakdown of premises we've got in wards versus what was inspected. Not everyone's inspected every year or anything,
No.
so that complicates it, but I could do that. Yeah.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Banks.
Yes, thank you. One question I was going to ask about these sweets. Were they made in this country or were they from America? Normally their standards are pretty high, so why did it go wrong?
A different standard.
Oh, I did.
For some ingredients they can fit in America, you can't.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So I'm wrong in that respect.
Yeah, I think some standards are different, but I wouldn't say necessarily.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it could have been acceptable in America. Very old.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Right.
I just wondering, because you mentioned that there are some companies which register and then they can operate. Is it a requirement that they register before they start operating?
Yeah, it's a requirement to register 28 days before you operate. But we're finding people will register like 6 months ahead sometimes, or they register 28 days ahead, but actually they're not ready to trade for another 4 months or something. Because they people's planning doesn't always, there's sometimes circumstances that mean you're not ready, but we're finding the form's really easy to do. So that gets done first.
It's a final conversation on time ahead of time. Was there any problems?
It just means that sometimes we'll have aborted visits because an officer will go out to inspect them. So say I've registered, I'm going to be trading, and I'm not. So.
Well, that was one of my questions as well. And the other one was about the export licensing. I mean, do you think that's because firms are getting to know the new EU regulations and what's required?
So most of the certificates, the export certificates we do are for sort of Middle East.
Yeah,
Not
so much in Europe, no. Okay, that's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
And I agree with Councillor about the down the walls, because I think that can help adjust to anything that's perhaps going on.
Yeah.
Or if any residents are coming to us as well. No,
Yeah, I can give some data around that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? Yeah. Councillors, so we've reviewed progress and we've provided that comments on that. So we'll move on then to the next agenda item, which is the item number 5, CCTV and consultation update. Michelle.
Indeed, thank you, Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to allow members of the Licence Protection Committee the opportunity to review the consultation that we carried out in response to the possible mandating of CCTV in licensed vehicles. As I let them sit down.
Do take three if you have to have one. You sit inside there.
No, as per the previous meeting, it was a request for us to go away and do a consultation in relation to mandating CCTV in taxis. We carried out that consultation. We did an 8-week consultation from 25th July to 24th of September. This was a consultation with obviously internal partners, external partners, and obviously our trade and the public. So it was kind of well advertised, if you like, and I'm sure you can see why obviously Appendix A, there was a number of responses. So we're looking in the region of sort of 130 plus responses. In terms of the mandating CCTV for taxi vehicles, now this was something that back in 2020, the DfT asked us to, or they put forward some statutory standards, of which the majority of those was all implemented during our 2024 policy review. The CCTV obviously wasn't sort of looked at that point. And I think one of the reasons it wasn't looked at was because we haven't really got the crime and disorder statistics behind us. Even following the consultation that went out, we didn't receive anything directly from the police highlighting that there is a concern or an issue with crime and disorder linked necessarily with taxis. So we didn't have that evidence to put forward in this report. So I think, taking into account, obviously, taxis are used for a number of things, as sort of I've highlighted in the report. So we've got obviously the special education needs transport. We've got obviously other school runs, airport. We've got executive travel, which obviously does allow them to have a plate exemption. Taking all that into account, and obviously the number of responses that came back, and obviously if we look at rather than a percentage, but in terms of numbers, we've approximately got 47 across the trade and the public in support of having mandating CCTV, and 82 objecting to mandating it. Within this report, what I'm proposing is that at this time, not to necessarily make a decision today to mandate it in all vehicles, but allow officers to go away and do further consultation with the public, with the trade. I don't think, because it is quite a significant cost to the trade, obviously, not that it doesn't come with its benefits by all means, but I think we need to really make sure we fully understood it and we've got everybody on board with it. We do plan to do obviously further taxi forums as the end of the year approaches and the beginning of next year, and that's a great opportunity then for us to engage further with the trade and obviously try and get them on board if it's something they would like. I think just a couple of things to highlight. One is, even though it's not mandated in across the whole licence fleet, it doesn't stop individuals being having it as a condition on their licence. So, for example, if you know, a driver came forward to yourselves as part of the subcommittee, you have got that within your gift to say, actually, you know, we're mandating that you have CCTV in your vehicle, and that can be added as a condition on their licence. So that's obviously, you know, something just to consider. And yeah, as I say, it's one of those that, but I just, you know, as I say, part of our recommendations is that we don't rush into it now. We can't afford the time to do some further work, consultation with both the public and the trade, weekends and further. I know that obviously we've got, in terms of neighbouring councils, obviously South Camden City do mandate it. Peterborough doesn't. East Cambs doesn't, Fenland doesn't. So, you know, in terms of our kind of neighbouring districts, that's just giving you a flavour. So I'm happy to of course, take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scott.
In the other areas that are using CCTVs, do we have any data about how that helps with crime numbers or nothing at all?
We've asked them for their feedback on it, of which they said obviously it's been the trade, in all fairness, have found it beneficial because, like everything, we get complaints in, and it's obviously the trade's worst to get a word against the member of the public, you know, whereas obviously with having CCTV in there, it will prove, you know, either one. So, you know, in terms of that, they kind of, you know, report back to me that it's a benefit. But again, as part of going forward, I can re-ask in terms of if they've got any, you know, statistics about it, or, you know, because they've not had it necessarily mandated that long. So obviously by the time, because it was brought in and there was an implementation period. So, so I don't think it's something that they've got lots of data on. So
Thank you.
Thank you. You also Councillor Jordan?
No.
Sorry, Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I think I agree with you to do another consultation. I think what I would like to see is to understand from the public side is how many public are involved in the consultation. That's the trend. I think they will benefit, but I think they've got something like that. Say interest in it. And the members of that's where I want to see how much so.
okay, so a more targeted approach to members of the public. So obviously we put it out on our website. It went out on social media. So we didn't, you know, and obviously we went to external partners as well. So, but yes, certainly we could do some more targeted public consultation. Yeah, we can certainly look at that with our content. So yeah.
Councillor Banks.
Yes, sorry,
Thank
that
you.
might be my question.
Yes, unfortunately, in our society now, we have police, they're talking about nurses having them, we're talking about shops, CCTV, but they also want to have personal, because it works good for both sides. it can, I personally think it's, unfortunately, that's the way it's going to be. And I think it would be beneficial for the taxi drivers plus the public to know that if they get in, that it could be recorded, like it's nearly all over everywhere now. So I know that people might be against it. Can't understand why taxi drivers are against it, because it could work in their favour with, customers, how they can be really bad, so, I look forward to it being, I know we can do it, as you said, as a subcommittee, but I'd like to see it as a general thing first. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Clark and Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I'm very much in favour. Most households now have got it on the housing, don't they? And I wonder if we could phase it in, possibly start with new taxi applicants. Be a phase that we could say, I would like to hear what you said before I put my pen down.
Yeah, interesting idea. So we would adopt it as a policy.
Yeah, and phase it
Apply
in.
it to existing licenses.
Wouldn't hit quite so hard, would it?
Yeah. Possibly. On that, Michelle?
So are you saying as in new vehicles or completely new licence holders? Is that what?
I would have thought not the licence holders, but we could probably look at new vehicles. That would be the discussion we could have. I mean, the cost wouldn't be probably so much for the new vehicle, because it wouldn't an older one. I've had this experience putting in my car, it cost £300 some odd pounds. But if you go into them, you could probably get it put in for nothing.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's more of a, that might be more of a dash cam as opposed to
No, but I'm using that as
CCTV,
an
you know what I mean?
example.
Which I think the CCTV is a sort of quite standard cost, sort of between the sort of 500 to 1,000 is kind of, so yeah, again, it's something we could, explore during the consultation and potentially bring all of that back. And I think what would be good is to get some, sort of more defined figures as well, because say we are being quoted anything ranging from sort of 500 to 1,000, and obviously one of the things obviously for us to mandate it would obviously mean that we become potentially the data controller. Not that we have to. There may be ways around it, but it would mean that potentially we would be. So again, that's an extra thing for us to consider and some work with. Using hands.
Yes, well, you just brought that subject out on data. So yeah, I do agree there's a lot of consultation needs to be done. I'm not sure how long that's going to take or how that's going to look. But I suppose it's what are their concerns? Why are people not for it or for it? And I did wonder whether one was around who would store that data. Where would it be? Because there's obviously a lot around data control these days than there was, say, 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So there would be a concern about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously on Appendix A, so I've listed then obviously where the drivers have got objections to it. I've highlighted obviously all of their concerns as they come in. So a lot of it is about privacy. Some are saying that they don't feel it's kind of necessary for their business. Cost is quite factors in quite a lot of them. So there's a number of comments down there. So I've literally just taken everything as it come in. So.
Yeah, the data make it pretty interesting reading. And it was always wondered whether it's what's their mind in terms of on the discrete areas, so the next stage was to sound like what discrete issues were with discrete issues were, and people sort of reflect like that. So, yeah. Just a question on if we were talking about an optional scheme where a taxi driver might want to have CCTV camera ahead of a general policy, what would be the ramifications of that in terms of the council managing?
Yeah, no, so that they would remain the data controller of that, and that's all in our policy. So if anybody, say an individual or company come forward and said we want to put CCTV in, as we have got some out there that have, they just need to make sure they're adhering to the conditions within the policy, the existing policy that we've got. So,
that's a good one.
yeah, absolutely. And we have, even during this, we've been notified, and we are aware there are some drivers out there that've got CCTV. They feel it's beneficial. So we've got it.
Yeah. Any further questions, councillors? No, thank you. In that case, the recommendation is number one, that members of the Licensing and Protection Committee note the contents of the report with consultation feedback received, and permit officers to undertake further engagement with the licensed trade and public prior to making final decision on whether to mandate CCTV and other reports licensed council. Number two, following a further period of engagement and consultation, an updated report will be prepared and presented to the licensing consideration. Can I see all those in favour of those recommendations, please? Right, let's see what we're doing this again. Thank you, councillor. Okay, moving on to item 6, this is the street trading policy and consent for the district. And it's all with William.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of my report today is to allow all of you members of the Licensing and Protection Committee to review and approve the draft street trading policy and its conditions, and to review all of the comments received during the public consultation. And it will also allow members the options to consider and approve the designation of all streets within the district as consented streets, and also to approve the proposed consent fees. At present, Huntingdonshire District Council, as the licensing authority, does not have a street trading policy, which makes effective regulation very difficult. Unregulated trading, it creates risk for both the council and the communities that the traders are within. When traders operate without permission, it becomes very difficult to enforce health and safety standards, exposes the public to potential hazards, and it undermines fair oversight by people that are trying to do it right. We also lose valuable income from licensing fees, and legitimate traders may feel discouraged if others are allowed to trade without following similar rules. It promotes unfair competition, and it weakens confidence in our licensing system. Beyond sort of the challenges around noise, litter, congestion, damage to shared areas, which can arise through unregulated trading, it's also a missed opportunity for positive growth within the district. Properly managed traders and events can create vibrant spaces. It can support local businesses rather than detract from local businesses, and it can boost the economy in general. And without proper regulation, these benefits are lost, and we run the risk of having disorder instead of a thriving, well-organized trading economy. We've given a lot of consideration to the impact on protecting the public as our foremost function as a licensing authority. We've also looked at the livelihood of the licensed trade for people that do want to partake in street trading, as well as the impact on existing businesses that have a fixed premises, and then our ability to provide a reliable and cost-effective service. So we've looked at a lot of different options which allow flexible street trading consents. We're looking to introduce a one-day option for the traders that want to come in and out of the district. Maybe one day they're in Cambridge, the next month they want to come here and trade sort of more niche products. It gives them that flexibility. We're also looking at 1 month, 6 month, and annual consents for those that want to stay in the district and commit long term. And we're also looking to implement a new 10-day trial period, which would allow any new trader the ability to come in, test the waters before committing to a longer term, make sure that the area works for them. Because as you all know, the district's quite large. What works in St Neots might not work in Ramsey, might not work in Huntingdon, it may work in Exham. The consents are also aiming to include a built-in pavement license. So we would, on the site assessment, allow an appropriate amount of tables and chairs to allow sort of a food trader, if they want to serve some food, a customer can sit down and consume that food without the need for a separate application and separate fees and more sort of complicated red tape. We've also given consideration to this being quite a new licensing regime for us. Everyone knows about alcohol licensing, they know about taxis. Street trading is still an unknown. So we're going to work quite closely with the economic development team, if this is approved, to create leaflet style brochures that the economic development officers can take to businesses. And it creates a more engaging way of businesses actually understanding what they can and can't do. We do have a lot of businesses that have a fixed premise that would also like to offer a mobile service, such as coffee shops, go into events. So this allows them the options to do that. Obviously, we've identified key risks and potentials if we don't have a properly regulated policy. I've already discussed the impact on public safety and confidence. And there is a key risk that we've identified that we could do all of this and there is a lack of uptake. But what we're hoping by is the consent fees, the consent duration, and the work with economic development, we can mitigate any risk of a lack of uptake and really encourage this within the district. It's proposed that any approved street trading policy can be implemented as soon as tomorrow. We've got the application process in place. We've got the website ready to be updated. And as of, I think, about 12 o'clock today, we've had 4 street trading applications on hold, waiting to see what happens. So we do have traders wanting to start to engage with this new process. We've been very careful to make sure that the proposed policy links into the corporate plan. We've really focused on the 3 key priorities of improving quality of life for local people, creating a better Huntingdonshire for future generations, however that may look with the changing landscape, and as well as delivering our core work well. We put this out for public consultation, and you'll see all responses in Appendix B. We've issued this to the general public, to key stakeholders. We've put it through the town and parish newsletter, and we've looked at those, and they're there for your consideration today. Obviously, we've had to look at the legal and resource implications. Without a proper policy in place, it takes away our ability to effectively enforce the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act. And obviously, resource implications. Unregulated trading is much harder to manage and staff than proper compliant regulated trading. So the fees that we're proposing, if they are approved, they would cover the costs associated with the implementation and any ongoing fees, much like our other licensing regimes. And any implications will be met from the existing resource staffing. We've identified any impacts on climate change implications, and we're not anticipating there to be any key disruptions to any net zero goals. We've got conditions around generators and the use of that, and site assessments will allow us to look at any sort of excessive exhaust emissions or proximity to the trading site where it could cause ecological harm. And really the recommended decisions to introduce this street trading policy allows us to address the lack of regulation, remove the risk to public safety, increase fairness, and allow places. And it creates a clear framework balancing trader support with community protection, offering flexible consent options, trial periods, and a much more streamlined process to encourage compliant trading. And it's backed by supporting material and what will hopefully be a self-financing fee structure to cover the costs. And then it's got the added benefits of boosting local vibrancy, ensuring fairness, and aligning itself with the council's priorities as discussed. So you'll see in Appendix A, you've got the draft, the policy. Appendix B is the consultation responses, and I invite you to ask any questions regarding either of those. And then Appendix C is our proposed fee structure, which once again, I'm happy to ask any questions. You may ask Michelle to assist me with Appendix C.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this. Okay, Councillor, questions?
Your payment licenses, how are you going to monitor that? Because, you know, if someone comes along to you and says, we're having a party, we're having a lot of people in on Saturday, can we extend to have a payment license? And then by next Wednesday, they're saying, actually, in my area, it doesn't really matter. How are you going to monitor the amount of time they're alive for payment license? And I know some people have a permanent payment license, but how would you monitor someone who just wants a payment license for a short period of time?
So with the street trading concept, you'll either have a static trader or a mobile trader. It's unlikely that mobile traders would be given any permission for a table and chair because they're only allowed to trade for 15 minutes. That's your, think of your sandwich man going to Eastwood House, ringing the bell, everyone comes out, they're off to the next industrial estate. The static traders will have to apply for consented times, and they're only permitted to trade within those consented times. So we would regulate that they're allowed to trade, say, between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. And that's the time.
Not happens now, isn't it? They get a specific.
Yeah. So we will mirror an element of payment licensing into the street trading. But what we were keen to do is, you've got a static pitch, you have to have this permission, then you've got to have that permission, then this permission, and it gets very complex for people that run sandwich vans, that run a taco truck, and we're trying to look at ways that we can kind of remove a bit of red tape and confusion around the different licensing regimes. So by building in a small permission for 1 or 2 tables or chairs, depending on the size of the static location, anything more than that or outside of that area would then require them to have a full pavement license.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clausen.
I thought this was a brilliant piece.
Okay.
I thought it was really, you know, you can pick it up, easy to read, nice, clear, which is what anybody wants. I mean, the ice cream trays, that was, I never thought about them being DBS paid for children. They're not, they don't have to have that now.
No, so you'll see.
I suppose there's not many children that probably have that amount of money. You did the price of an ice cream.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a bit surprised by that. But it was good to see it in because I hadn't realised. So, well, I think this is a really good piece of work. Well done. I think it's very, very clear and everything. I think it sets it out, and as I say, it's easy to read. There's no confusion. And if I could pick up and read it, then I think most people can. So well done. I think it was a really good piece of work. Yeah.
Other councillors' questions? Councillor Fox.
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned about paving activities. You're not allowed to park a car on the pavement because of obstruction. And I'm seeing pubs now that put tables and chairs outside that take up more than half the pavement. And people, sometimes a person in a 3-wheel thing will come and park side of them, and then the people have to step on the road to get by. What's in place to sort that out?
Right, so obviously pavement licenses are a separate licensing regime to street trading. So we've actually had a new member of staff who started a couple of months ago. His more or less sole focus is inspecting licensed premises. And as part of that, he is looking at any tables and chairs that are there. He's looking at the site plans to make sure they've not changed. I think we've had this is sort of getting off piece, but I think we've had a record amount of minor variations or very DPS applications come through, which are all on the back of his visits going to premises that have never historically had council intervention. And it's very much not enforcement, it's very much compliance, regulation and support. And he's picking up the issues with tables and chairs. It's sort of going above and beyond the curtilage of the premises. In the context of the street trading, what we're doing is we will assess every static pitch. So if someone wanted to go, say, just for ease of access, someone wanted to go down Checkers Court, we would look at that and say, can you really fit a food truck down there? Parts of it, yes, parts of it, no. Is there really then space for additional tables and chairs? If the answer is no, we haven't allowed the 2.5 metre gap for disabled access, then they won't be allowed to happen. If they're wanting to trade, say, in a very large open car park, lots of space, there's no risk to the public, we would say you could have a table and 2 chairs for that person that's eating their burger, waiting for the next item to be cooked. And it creates a bit more of a vibrant, rather than people stood milling around in large groups. That's sort of the hope for that. So then hopefully that covers that for you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jude.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'm in favor of all the policy that you read, and it is a good policy, and yes, I like it. What are the methods we are using currently with this tree, for the people who are trading right now?
At the moment, if they're not consented, they're free to trade essentially wherever they want, because we have no power to restrict them throughout that consent. So we are aware of traders that are trading, that aren't regulated, that aren't paying a license fee, and we have 1 or 2 that have gone through the correct channels. That's these 4 applications that I sort of said about earlier. They're the ones that we're aware that haven't been, and they are waiting to see what the outcome is. Because what we didn't want to do is ask them to apply for consent without the policy to then have to then apply again. They would lose non-refundable fees. So currently there is no regulation.
Yeah. So yeah, I think thank you very much for that. I think so. This policy is very urgent from what I can see. I think we need to consider this.
I think just to add to what William said, currently, we've got a handful of streets within the whole district that are consented, and this is an old consent that was when it came forward many years ago to the Licensing Committee. So for example, if you've got here a street, it might be one side of that street is consented, the other side is not, so that's why we've looked at it and said, actually, let's consent the whole district. Because obviously that's a fairer way of doing it. As William highlighted, there may be some areas where once people start applying, we go, actually, that's not a suitable location, but that's, each application assessed on its own merit, in terms of by consenting the whole area, it means that we've not got somebody that will go, well, I can set up my food van here and pay nothing or be regulated, but if I go here, so that's why we've kind of got the consent for whole.
And there are safeguards within the policy that should a street cause a particular problem, the consent, obviously you put forward to yourselves for removal, or we can revoke consents from the individual trader that may be causing the problem. So it's not a case of everywhere is consented, the floodgates are open, it still will be properly regulated. It just allows the openness, because previously I think it was 4 streets in Huntingdon, Linson here to Goodlands and Eyes, and I think all of the other towns and villages were left off of this consent. So anyone could go into the Ashley trade, Stilton, Sawtree, anywhere else that offers, and it's not regulated correctly.
With regard to ice cream traders mainly, if they are registered in another district, regularly operating on dealership, they registered really well.
Yeah.
That's my board, the activity is quite important for us to get a lot back.
So from a food business perspective, they can be, and Kate, I'm sure will correct me otherwise, but the food business is registered as whereas the business is sort of registered. I think if they're coming into our area, certainly from a street trading consent, they will have a consent. Okay, do they need to be registered here, or as long as they're registered in Peterborough?
If the ice cream vans would be registered where the nights is there coming out of Peterborough. The only slight exception to that is if they were only going to create every day in Hampstead, we can do a transfer of sort of responsibility, and then we would inspect and rate them.
I think most of the ones that we
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other one is linked as well with regards to DBS.
Yeah.
It says it has to be dated 1 month prior. Is there any requirement updated after a certain period of time or to be on an update register? Because obviously no one is there.
Yeah. So we've kind of looked at how we regulate with taxis, because that's really the only other sort of DBS that comes in. Personal licenses come into a bit as well, but the only one that can be on the update is an enhanced DBS. And that's probably a bit overly restricted to put onto an ice cream trader. The reason for wanting a basic DBS is out of all of the types of businesses that one can think of as street trading, the only time you can really think of an unsupervised child approaching a business would be the traditional ice cream truck. And that's why we've gone for basic, and we've applied the 1 month standard, as that's usually what's applied throughout Licensing Act, applied throughout the taxi and regulations. So we've mirrored for consistency to that one.
Is there any way we can put something so like it for 5 years?
Well, it would have to be renewed
Every year. So
yeah. Consent.
So the consent only lasts for 1 year, and then they need to reapply. So that would be part of the package.
I just have a question. So I was just thinking about villages that have these fairs. So Brampton has a village fair, and they have food stalls and things like that on there. How does that about this?
So there will be some general exclusions to street trading. So you'll have things such as your community events. I'm just getting you the exact wording. So trading at a fete, carnival, or similar community-based and run events such as Christmas lights, switch on fireworks display. they're exempt. Non-commercial, community or charitable events where the profits are not used for private gain or are wholly passed to a charity or political educational organisation. Travelling fairs where they've got permission already from the council. And anywhere that's exclusively on private land where there's no trading being conducted on the public land. So if you think the car park opposite us is private land, but all their customers are stood on the public path, they would need consent. If all trading is contained within the private land, they won't need consent. They just obviously have to have the landowner's permission at that point. So there is quite a lot of exclusion that
Yeah.
this is aimed at commercial businesses, not your community-led events.
Thank you for clarifying.
That's okay.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Just a couple from me. Just ask whether there are strict training policies in place with neighbouring councils.
Yeah, so there are strict trading policies certainly in all of the neighbouring districts. They will have slightly different standards that they apply. When I've created this policy, I have used those as benchmarks to see for consistency. Some have been good, and we've borrowed some things and made it pushed into our own district. Some of them were probably overly onerous and were left out. In Councillor Jordan summed it up very well. It was quite clear and concise, so we wanted to get something that everyone would pick up and partake in, hopefully.
On section 1.19, you mentioned like we should distribute between half towns. You mentioned markets, Mondays and Fridays, and hunting markets, Wednesdays and Saturdays. But I'm just noting that there's those particular markets. So those kind of not other markets. Would you clarify that?
Yeah, so the specific locations, dates and times were all obtained from the markets team. So we consulted with them prior to this going out and also during the public consultation. That was the information they came back with as being the established chartered markets where there's exclusion zones. If I could bring your attention to 1.21, we have added a caveat that says these locations and times are subject to change. So obviously, if the markets change, they take on an extra day, we need to obviously protect that. But further protection is also the site assessments that we do before we actually grant a static pitch. So if we know that there's an established market that isn't chartered, this is going to have a detrimental impact on existing traders. It's unlikely a consent would be granted for the particular location.
For example, the Saturday market, which is a fantastic market, which happens every fortnight. This is this operation again.
Yeah, and as part of the consultation as well, we would consult with town councils, parish councils. So then they are able to, obviously we don't know everything that's run at different levels, but everyone will have the opportunity to be a consultee in that capacity. And that will, like I said, all form part of static. So even if it's not covered in specific definition, it will form part of the site assessment, which if I bring you to 8.3 of the policy, that gives you an overview of all of the considerations during a site assessment, and it will be proximity to other businesses, proximity to residential properties, and places of cultural or historical significance, educational institutions. So that's where we can use that during the assessment to say, well, there's already an established market here. You're not part of that market. You shouldn't be trading here.
Thank you for that. Great. My only other point was that obviously we've got a number of consultee responses. I was just thinking we need to go through them now, but are we actually providing responses to? So, for example, Budget on Bid, we have State Council, the Environmental Health, or some last questions or another. So, are we replying to those?
Yeah, we certainly can do. We have reviewed them and taken in. There are some some obviously good points raised within there. I think as we've discussed the DBS, if you're happy for me just to maybe discuss the DBS side of things. I know environmental health have stated that there are, and they're aware through their food registrations, that there are a number of vehicles selling ice cream based desserts that aren't necessarily your traditional ice cream van. So we have to give some form of consideration to the policy condition. And also I know that it was St Ives Town Council had recommended DBS checks for any vendor that comes into contact with children and vulnerable adults. So certainly from the licensing team's perspective, I think if you were to require any vendor that comes into contact with children or vulnerable adults, it's very onerous. Your average shopkeeper is going to come into contact with children and vulnerable adults and isn't required to provide DBS checks as part of their employment unless the employer specifically does so. I think it can be a bit too onerous. I think targeting to ice cream vans, but perhaps an amendment to the wording that states ice cream van traders or similar, and that allows a slightly broader scope where Kate's obviously well versed in the different type of businesses registered that would still be approached by children. And we could change the wording to say ice cream van traders or similar.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, to say it's important to strike the balance between what's achievable and sensible levels of cost and effort to implement. So, it's really what you need. If there's no further questions, then we should move to the recommendation and you can vote. So the recommendation is that the Licensing and Protection Committee is recommended to consider the proposed policy along with its conditions, as well as the consultation responses, and approve the street trading policy to take effect from the 23rd of October 2025. Members are also asked to consider and approve the designation of all streets within the district to be consented streets and to approve the proposed consent fees. And let's see all those in favour of the recommendations. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 7, this is the suspension and revocation of Hackney carriage and private hire licences.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So this is a standard report that comes forward during these committee meetings. So obviously the Service Licence Manager and the Public Protection Manager have delegated authority to suspend, revoke or refuse applications, both for drivers, vehicles and operators, and our delegated powers. And in section 2 of the report, you will see the full list of where this has taken place. A couple of these have actually come before the licensing committee, but apart from that, 3 other one has obviously come under delegated powers. I've highlighted obviously the reason why they've been either revoked or suspended. As I always say, I'm not able to go into absolute detail as to, but if anybody wants to talk to me after in terms of specifics as regards to the reasons, to go over that. What I would say is obviously in terms of the numbers, so obviously this covered the period of June to the end of September, so sort of 4-month period. 38 vehicles obviously had action taken against them, 2 drivers and 0 operators. After the last meeting, obviously, I spoke about sort of dangerous vehicle defects and major vehicle defects. So I've just put a summary in there at 2.2 and 2.3 of the report, just to highlight the difference between the two, just for clarity, really. Going down, section 3 of the report, that highlights the penalty points that are issued. So again, as part of the taxi policy review last year, we introduced a penalty point scheme, which again is allowing us to use a lower level of enforcement, which then we can obviously build up to review that licence. So you'll see within that, obviously, there's been a number of points issued for failing to declare. We've obviously issued points for dangerous defects and continuing to drive, etc. Complaints. So I've highlighted all of the reasons within there, which are quite varied. We are seeing appearing to get complaints at the minute as well from other districts whereby our drivers are parking in taxi ranks outside of the district, which is obviously not allowed. So obviously there's been action taken against that particular driver. In section 4 of the report, just updates, obviously, again, at the stage I'm not able to obviously identify who, but obviously there was a driver brought before the committee. The committee made a decision to revoke that driver. That driver is obviously appealing that decision. We're due in court in November. I believe that's just for the first hearing, so the full hearing will be next year. But again, I'll keep you updated throughout these meetings to see the outcome of that. Certainly happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Michelle. Councillors, any questions on this agenda item? Councillor Banks.
Yes, just it's quite frightening the amount of major defects and problems that our officers have found. And it's only through their diligence that obviously, otherwise they would be driving well, it's horrendous, quite frightening really, and dangerous defects. And I applaud our department that are looking into it. So thank them very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And a lot of these, where it's got obviously the major defects and the test value, that's when they go for their compliance testing. So again, you know, as part of the policy, we bring in the 6-month compliance test, which I think has kind of highlighted and added to some of these actions that have been taken. As I say, for major defects and dangerous ones, plates are removed until such time as the vehicle is fit to be back on the road.
It shows we're looking after the public's interest, isn't it? Very well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor,
I think you partially answered, because I just wanted to understand about the failure to attend 6-month inspection. It's just to understand, I think.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, so if a vehicle's over 8 years old, 8 years old, it needs to have a compliance test 6-month interval. So it has a compliance test at the renewal stage if it's licensed or new, and then it has it's due to have another one then 6 months later. This particular vehicle failed to attend, and obviously the decision was made to suspend that vehicle until such time as it had it, because we wasn't satisfied that actually the vehicle was safe to be on the road. So, you know, and very much, you know, the team are of, you know, of the mindset that obviously if they've got any doubts, then we'd rather suspend the vehicle, make sure it's safe before we have members of the public in it.
Just comment really. I mean, I think this sends out a really good work to because taxi drivers talk to other taxi drivers. I think this sends out. I think the district council are going to come down on who doesn't comply. So I think it's really good that this gets published and is out there. So well done.
Any other questions? Thank you. So the recommendation given us to review the reports, which we've just done, and thank you for your advice, councillors. Moving on then to item 8, which is the public space protection order for Amesbury. See report from that order.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll remember from the last committee meeting that there was a yearly review of the Amesbury PSPO. Following that, a decision was made by the Public Protection Manager to continue the PSPO for another year. So this report is just your standard quarterly review of that PSPO. I say quarterly, but it actually covers 4 months from June to September. So relatively short in terms of an update. Over the last 4 months, the District Council and police have received no reports of any breaches of the PSPO in Amesbury. The only thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is that the CCTV camera that was put up there temporarily has now been removed. That was after a review of budget and obviously the need for the camera. So we will obviously monitor that going forward and obviously note any changes in the reports that we are getting. But that concludes the report for Amesbury.
Questions, councillors? It's great to see that there are no reports. Obviously, that's great for Gainsbury. Is there any change to the status of the homeless accommodation that was part of the problem? Already came right in the first place.
No, so it remains the same. Obviously, since the PSPO is in place, we've worked closely with them to kind of see what are the ongoing issues that were around the premises. And obviously they've kind of reinforced that with their tenants as well, which hopefully has improved their behaviour. And obviously I think that's indicative in the reports that we've had as well. So hopefully that's had an effect. But no, it remains the same.
Thank you. So the report, and moving on to 9, which is the project status protection order for Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, so the Ramsey PSPO, so this is your usual quarterly report, but also this is the first yearly report of the Ramsey PSPO. So coming to the quarterly review first, or the last 4 months, I should say, we had 8 reports in total over the last 4 months. So I've outlined the reports that we have as a district council in 1.3. I've kind of summarised the behaviour that was reported so that for your awareness. So I won't go over those, and that they are kind of related to street drinking type behaviour. Then in 1.5, I have detailed the reports that the neighbourhood policing team received in relation to breaches of PSPO. In terms of what we've done about these breaches, so we had our first prosecution of the breach of PSPO and a non-payment of fixed penalty notice, which is the first one we've ever done as a team. So that's something that we wanted to highlight. And also, following kind of the reports that we've had, we've used individual-based sanctions. So we've used community protection warnings against individuals that we've managed to identify breaching the PSPO. And also for those that are more prolific in the area in terms of their behaviour, we have used the evidence to apply for a criminal behaviour order with the police. So we're working with them towards that to hopefully curb the behaviours that have been reported. Obviously, you'll note that the reports that we've had are slightly higher than what we typically get in a quarter. Obviously, there's a couple of reasons that this might be. Obviously, we've got the extra month in the report, so that could possibly be the reason, but also because of the type of behaviours that we're seeing being reported tend to be higher in the summer months. So that could be another reason as well. The CCTV still is in Ramsey. There's nothing to say that that's going to change. That was a permanent fixture before the PSPO came into place, so we haven't had any update on that. So that still remains in place, and that obviously helps us to identify when we do get breaches reported. In terms of the yearly report, so we've had 13 reports in total across the year, and obviously those have been detailed in each report that we have provided. I've also included the update from the Neighbourhood Police Sergeant in there as well. Obviously, there has been some comments previously about displacement issues with the PSPO. We've looked at those, we've reviewed them, and we have dealt with those kind of outside of needing to extend the PSPO. At the moment, the antisocial behaviour in those areas are remaining low, so we haven't made a decision to extend it as of yet, but as I say, we'll continue to monitor it going forward. The PSPO would have been officially in place for a year next month, so again, the Public Protection Manager will make a decision as to whether to continue it on for another year. But that concludes the report, Ramsey.
Thank you very much. Questions on this one, councillors?
Well, just one question. There's only been 13 is that because they realise now that people who are doing it, there is repercussions for their actions? So that's a good thing. So I'm quite fit to only go back to it again.
Yeah.
Is it easy to put on, or once you take it off, is it easy to put back on?
So I would assume it would have to be a reapplication for it to be reintroduced if it was then discontinued. So we would have to assess that. But we have very strong evidence from the police to suggest that it still needs to be made in place. So yeah, we will make a decision with kind of all the evidence that we've got. But I think This report hopefully highlights the amount of action that we have taken on the breaches that we've had. There have been some where we haven't been able to take any action purely because the victim no longer wished to support, and obviously we can't then pursue it. But the ones that we have, we've issued fixed penalty notices, warnings, etc. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, yes, and yes, it's quite a very strong opinion that the SPA should. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so other questions? We'll move on then to having this the report with which thank you, Georgia. Moving on to item 10.
Good evening all, and thank you, Chair. So this is a standardised report with regards to an update from the Community Action Team in Q2. So from 1st of July 25 until 30th of September 25, the Community Action Team received a total of 658 service requests. The breakdown for those are within 1.2. Response times within 5 working days. Response times met were 98.38%, which is above the 90% standard. The prevention and intervention sanctions, as George has highlighted with the PSPO, we issued 39 prevention and intervention sanctions during Q2. Breakdown of that is within 1.5. During Q2, we issued 5 fixed penalty notices. That was in relation to breach of PSPO. Fly tipping for residential, fly tipping for commercial, 2 of those, and a littering offence. We also had a prosecution, which was for failure to produce waste carry licence, failure to produce waste carry transfer notes. That was a guilty verdict, and the total cost there were £3,050.14. And that concludes the report.
Thank you. Any questions on this report, guys?
Yeah, it's not a question actually, it's well done again. Especially as a resident actually did seek me out and say about fly tipping that she called in and how quickly it was dealt with. And she wanted me to pass my thanks on when I finished this, so I'm doing that. Again, it was about a very clear to the members, public, you know, who do this sort of thing, that they will be prosecuted and they will be dealt with. So a very good report.
Obviously, I'll pass that over to the operations services as well, because we obviously go out to the fly tips when they're initially reported to evaluate evidence and things like that. But it's actually, we then pass it over to the operations who clear. So they do an amazing job as well.
I often get, when I hold a Saturday surgery, I often get people who will come up and tell me that they have reported fly tipping and how quickly it's been dealt with. They're always surprised. Yeah, right. I do understand why. I just said, no, that's district council.
I'm sure to pass over to the operations team as well. Thank you.
Continue. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors?
No,
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. With your report, which moving on finally then to item 11, which is the licensing and protection subcommittees that have taken place since the last full meeting. One subcommittee meeting, which is a private hire driver license renewal, which Frank kindly undertook for us, and the outcomes of the license was not renewed. Should you save that report, councillors? That brings us to the end of the meeting, so the meeting closed. We'll move on to the licensing committee. So welcome to the licensing committee meeting. Today, Wednesday, 22nd of October 2025. Apologies for this one as well. Yes. Okay, we received those and minutes of the previous meeting. You're all happy to receive the not very lengthy minutes of the previous meeting? Members of interest, do members have any interest to declare Third or junior or other registered or non-registered religious related to the agenda item tonight? No. Thank you. So moving on to item 3, this is the Licensing Act 2003 Statement of Licensing Policy. This is Michelle.
Thank you. So the state licensing policy, the council is required to produce a state licensing policy every 5 years. Our current policy expires on the 7th of January 2026, and therefore bringing this draft policy to yourselves to approve in readiness for next year. In terms of the draft policy, it went out for consultation again, 6-week consultation. We consulted with internal and external colleagues, town and parish councils, and obviously had 6 consultation responses back, of which you can see at the within your report. In terms of the actual significant changes, obviously this policy came about obviously following the introduction of the Licensing Act in 2005. There's not been significant changes within the Act, and certainly since the last review of this policy, which was in 2021. At Appendix A, you'll see that I've added a change login, so rather than kind of writing over the draft policy, I've kind of just added in change log. So just to sort of highlight significant changes, so at Section 5, we've got a new section there in relation to the agent of change. So references the agent of change principles in relation to national planning policy framework. So in essence, for existing premises is next to some new development. Then obviously it's the restriction is on the new development to make sure that obviously the houses are kind of soundproof enough, and it's not necessarily the responsibility of the pub, albeit, you know, obviously it works both ways. So we've added that in there. Section 6, equality and inclusion of licensed premises. Again, we've done some rewording of that in line, obviously, with our website and obligations. Section 7 is again a new section. So within that is the women's safety and wider vulnerability. Highlighted within that section, we've kind of put in there about staff training. We have made a significant reference to Ask for Angela. So again, as I'm sure all of you are aware, that there was a motion for council for us to adopt the Ask for Angela scheme, which this council obviously adopted. You know, we can't obviously mandate it across every single licence. However, the team, in conjunction obviously with the pub watch, the HVAC, are going out and obviously ensuring that, you know, and trying to promote that. And there's been a good take up in the premises, so we'll continue that work within that. We also obviously have added in there the drink spiking and the instant reporting. And obviously, in terms of sort of linking in with that section 7, we talked about the accreditation, which is Business Against Abuse, which this council undertook some training last week. We had a number of businesses attend a training session, and they'll be accredited once they've trained the rest of their staff. So that's about looking out for predatory behaviour within premises, not just necessarily licensed premises, but across premises in general. So that was undertaken. Section 8, community impact. We don't have a community impact policy, but we've obviously just sort of updated that. We've also updated just to sort of take it to the new section. So section 21. For those of you that it's not sort of been fully promoted yet, because it's the legislation Terrorism Act. Some of you will know it as Martin's Law. So legislation came into force earlier this year. However, there's a 2-year lead-in period, 18 months to 2 years. That's going to be under the control of the SIA to regulate that. But it's what I've done is looked at the Act, added in obviously what potentially is going to be relevant for premises, because although we can make any changes obviously to this policy during the 5 years, as it is 5 years, this will come in effect. So I wanted to make sure that was obviously clearly added in there. And they're kind of the significant updates. Some of the others are just updated information, updated wording, etc. As I say, so it did go out for consultation. We had the responses back. Just to sort of highlight it in terms of the response from public health, which was quite a detailed. I've added in where it's been considered relevant, those changes have been added into the draft policy that you then receive before you. So we've taken that, and that was really nice to get the consultation responses. As I say, happy to take any questions on it.
Sure. Councillor Banks.
Yes, I understand Angela's rules, but ask Angela it can be a criminal offence. So how would that look? I heard it in the news. So how was that going to affect?
Do you mean Martin's law or Ask for Angela?
Ask for Angela, sorry.
So Ask for Angela is not.
Not at the moment, but I understand.
Well, if it gets adopted as a law, then potentially, but at the minute, I wouldn't be able to sort of say that is in law. Obviously, as I say, we're promoting it. Hampton District Council is really supportive of it and does encourage each and every business to kind of ensure that is prominent within their premises. So but any obviously future law changes, obviously we have to wait for details of that to come out and stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Tony.
Yes, Michelle. I just wanted to commend the incorporation of the women's safety wider vulnerability section on this policy. I think it's really important. Even myself as a councillor, I've been chased down Huntingdon High Street, and the ability to have Ask for Angela, I think is so important. So I'm glad we, as a council, are flagging this in our policy work, and drink spiking as well. Whilst we've got various premises and the safety and protection of all ages, but particularly younger people, I think this is so important to flag, and I hope we're able to keep a record of events of spiking. I don't know whether the community team will be able to keep track of any reports on that. But I'm just pleased to see this in the policy and that we are looking after women and vulnerable people as part of the policy. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I may just come back on that one. In terms of obviously any reporting, Councillor, we do link in with the police on a regular basis. Obviously, if the drink spiking is reported to the police, it will be with them. Obviously, if we're aware from that, because it is a criminal offence, so obviously that will get reported, and they will obviously work with us and notify us accordingly. We'll work with premises. So absolutely, we'll make sure that's.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? More, please. Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to the recommendation then. So the recommendation here is that members of the licensing authority note and provide any further comments on the licensing Act 2003, regarding statements of licensing policy that's been produced, which continues to do. And secondly, that the committee recommends that policy be presented for council for final approval of adoption as the council's licensing Act 2003 statement of policy for a 5-year period ending no later than 7th January 2031. And let's see all those in favour of the recommendations, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. Concludes that item, so moving on to item 4, which is the licensing subcommittees since the last licensing meeting. And do like that. Yeah, so both of which were chaired by Councillor Banks. Many thanks, Councillor, for showing those to you. One was the Little Cafe at Stanton, and the other one was Icing Foods, Stanton Road, Huntingdon. In both cases, the applications were. Thanks for sharing the details.
I don't know if I'm ready to declare an interest being board member for conservative on that point.
That's fine.
Thank you, and that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Good evening.